everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Tona Brown. I have the distinct privilege to introduce you all to one of my good friends, and we're going to talk everything sex and sexuality today. So I hope you guys are ready. Any trigger warnings we want to give to people, because we're going to keep it real and authentic from our point of view on this show. And so I want to, with no further ado, I just want to introduce Troy Kennedy. Thank you so much for coming on Conversations with Tona Brown. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Although we have conversations every day, so at least this
Absolutely.
this time we're going to let the world in on it.
Absolutely. And that is why I wanted to introduce you to everyone first before we actually start doing segments that are specific on different topics. So first thing that I want to introduce everyone to is, how in the world did we meet each other? Like, do you remember the first time we actually started talking?
That was a long time ago, baby. Wow, it was in the dawn of social media.
That's right.
I believe it was some Yahoo groups that some friends of ours put together, and in the beginning, those Yahoo groups were fire. We
Mhm.
had real adult, open, honest conversations. People had some sort of anonymity at first, but we just began talking about great topics. We were on the same page, on the same wavelength. We were saying things that needed to be said and having conversations that needed to be had. So we developed a friendship. It's been multiple decades at this
Yeah,
point.
it really has. And that is where we should actually start. For people who don't understand how I got involved in working with you and other men to help you all have a safe space to share your stories and the things that you guys are committed to talk about. It all started because, just like most women, I really wanted to understand men more. And we had the opportunity to do that by going into these chat rooms, you guys. So this is how far back we go. There was Yahoo Instant Messenger. There was Black Planet. We used to have these chat rooms in there, with like the Black Transsexual Room. I remember was just one that just pops to my head. We had our own Yahoo family. And so we would have a good time by going into different chat rooms and stirring things up. So, for instance, and also my next guest was the same thing. She and I would do the same thing. We would go in there and then just bring up certain topics and see what the reaction was going to be. And this was back in the day. I mean, AOL still had that noise and everything. When you would have the little disc, and everybody be like, Tona, where are you at? I'm still trying to get online. So we go way back as friends. And I just want to thank you again for your courage and your honesty when it comes down to your path to being more aware about trans women, and even being there for us in the struggles that we go through as well. So I just want to take the time first to thank you so much for coming on the show and just doing the advocacy work that you do. So can you tell us a little bit about that, like this journey that you had? Like, where are you from? For people who don't know you, where are you from, and how did you first meet the first transgender woman that you met?
Before I get into that, I want to give a shout out to a couple of people, three different trans women who allowed me to be on their platforms before anybody else had any sort of platform. And that's, remember, Aquia Grant, when she
Right.
had Bruslo's TS Women on that in group. It was fire. It was adults. It was people talking, trying to shift the paradigm and to make a difference. And then
Mm-hmm.
Miko had her blog talk radio show, and we had fire discussions there. It was unapologetic, it was real, and it was something that was needed. And I was the distinguished gentleman from Detroit, thinking no one knew who I was, and everybody knew who I was. And then and then I can't forget Diamond Styles, because
Absolutely.
with Diamond, I did a video, probably now it's coming up on about a dozen years ago,
Yeah.
on YouTube on her page, where it was really the first of its kind that was consumed on social media, where she and I had an hour plus long just interview about talking about me, talking about what it means to be a so-called trans attracted man and what my journey looked like.
Hmm.
So
It was a wonderful interview. And remember, I used to have a group called Women of Distinction on that Ning platform because you could have your own little world and own social media platform. So it was really, really awesome. And we met so many people.
we did. And, the best part about that was those connections that I made then, I still have today. So Diamond called me up a couple of years ago because there was a documentary that she was a part of called Intentionally Erased. And she literally said, "Hey, can you be free between this date and this date?" He said, "I want you to be in a documentary." And I was like, "Okay, well, when you get all the information and it's set, let me know. It is set. Check your email. Bye." So
Right.
that's how we're connected. It's like, hey, I have something, I love what you do. I need you to be a part of it. And that's my sister and I love her to death.
Absolutely. And
So
we're
your
all
sec
across the country too. So some people
yes.
might assume that, because we're such close friends that we live near each other. I've only been around you in person maybe two times in all these years, two or three times, in all these years as your friend in person. So I think people, make so many assumptions about friendships with between men and women, especially. But we've never really spent like a week together or anything like that. I've never been right next to you for long periods of time, but it never mattered because of all this modern technology and we were able to just speak. But what was really amazing about getting to know you even back then were your stories about how you first were introduced to trans women. I really would like for you to share that, like the first woman that you met years ago. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Uh, I, I, I met a young woman named Jaleesa. I was 19. She was 17. This was in the mid 80s.
Okay.
So it was definitely a long, long time ago. So it was before social media. It was before Maury and Jerry Springer and all of those things that are out there. Trans women didn't have a social, they weren't viewed socially. People, it wasn't something we talked about.
Mm.
I met a young woman. She was in trouble. I always pictured myself as a superhero. So I put my cape on, looks like trouble. And I helped her out. After us, getting to know each other and talking and things of that nature, she told me that she was a transsexual. And I was like, well, what is that? It blew my mind. I had no concept. I had no knowledge. I didn't know what it meant. And I didn't know what it meant about me because she looked like my ex-girlfriend
Mm.
that I was dating in high school. They could have been sisters,
Wow.
literally. They looked the same. They were shaped the same. I didn't know how to make it make sense because I didn't have the knowledge base. I didn't have any peers to go through. And that initial meeting just sent me on down this road in the beginning of just a lot of self doubt, of fear, and
Mm.
all of these other myriad different feelings, trying to really understand myself and understand what it meant.
And what was the fear? Because you want anyone who follows you knows that you talk a lot about the fear that a lot of men have when they're addressing trans women, when they find, let's say, like you just met this young lady on a park in the park or something, or at the grocery store or whatever. There's this fear. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because we really want this to be a safe space for men who find themselves getting in relations with trans women, or maybe they want to, or whatever.
Well, first of all, we're taught and we're socially conditioned to believe that you're either straight, gay, or bisexual. If you're anything other than, as a black man, if you're anything other than straight, then there's definitely something wrong with you. That is a mark against your masculinity. That is, it's a bad thing. You don't want to carry that label. It's about being ostracized. It's about being othered. And
Mm-hmm.
so that fear, carrying that fear of what people will think about you, is all encompassing. It
Mm.
makes you It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you wonder what's going on. It makes you lie to yourself. It makes you lie to those around you. And literally, it's some sort of mental condition because you have to deprogram yourself. One of the things that some of the brothers call me, they call me Yoda because I always say you must unlearn what you have learned before you can take this journey and take this journey properly. When you don't have peers, when you don't have people that you can talk to openly about it, you fall into yourself, and then
Mm,
you fall into that fear. And as all of the brothers always tell me to do this quote that's actually from After Earth with Will Smith when he was talking to his son in the movie. He said, fear is not real. The only place where fear exists is in your thoughts of the future. It causes you to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not understand me. Danger is real, but fear is a choice.
hmm
When I heard that in that movie, it resonated within me. And I learned that quote verbatim because it explains a lot about the journey that men are taking. That fear, you fear things that aren't a threat to you at that point and may not
Right.
ever be a threat to you. I, I won't pretend to say that some men do lose their families. I've lost a job because I was dating a trans woman
hmm
and things of that nature. But that fear of what my family would think, what my friends would think, what the people around me would think was all unfounded.
Mm.
Once I stood up, everything was okay.
And it was a
So,
different time. It was a
oh
far
yeah,
different time than today because I think one of the things that frustrates a lot of women in general, but especially with this conversation, we're talking about trans people. But one thing that's so frustrating is all the work that we think as activists, being more visible, or what have you, that we've done this work to kind of explain who we are, and then we meet so many men who just seem to not be able to handle it. And could you talk a little bit about that, like the differences between then and now, and what do you think is the reason why they're having a hard time?
well, I started dating trans women when the internet really wasn't a thing. Social media really wasn't a thing. That visibility that trans women have today simply did not exist. It
hmm
was not a part of any conversation. I had never heard anyone say, there are trans women even existed. The trans women were out there. So my level of education, my exposure, there was nothing. And so when I first started meeting trans women, it's like, well, nobody told me about this, and I had no frame of reference on how to respond to it. So today, with social media, with movies and Pose and even Paris is Burning. Paris is Burning was one of the first uh, video documentaries about ballroom, but it had trans women in it,
Right.
and it that's when the exposure really just kind of started to ramp up. But as I became a part of the community, because one thing is a lot of guys try to do, they try to separate themselves from the
That's right.
community. They like to pretend that they're not they're not a part of the community. They're not into this, whatever this is, or however they frame it in their minds.
hmm
But that's not true. So it's all about self acceptance. My mother has always said this to me from a child. You must like, love, and respect yourself before you can like, love, and respect anyone else.
All
In
right,
fact,
Mom.
you've heard my mama say that.
Yes, I
So
have. Yes, yes.
and that's a mantra that I've heard my entire 60 years on this earth. I've heard that from my mother.
hmm
And I share that and I see that. I see that a lot of these men truly don't like, love, and respect themselves. They don't know themselves and they're scared to look in the mirror and simply state to themselves who they are, what they like, and what they're all about.
Wow.
If you can't do that as a man, as a person, period, then you can't share anything with anyone else. And that has always been the message that I've tried to convey to other men because everything that you've done, I've been DL, I've been married, messing with trans women. You know my whole story. I've done a lot. So I've been where they have been.
Right.
They've never been where I've been, and
But
that's what I really.
But this is
Go ahead.
important. I know your story, but the audience doesn't. So we need you to talk about that. You have been married. You are a man who loves women. So that includes cisgender women and trans women. So those are the type of things that we need to break down in this conversation so people understand that. So tell us a little bit about that. You had a journey. You were meeting trans women, you had relationships with trans women, and then you decided, why did you decide to get married to who you decided to get married to?
Because I wanted to be normal. I
Mm.
got married because I wanted to be normal. I wanted to not be different.
Mm.
I didn't want to be ostracized. I just wanted to be normal. And I felt that if I got married, I'm going to be normal.
Mm.
And the funny part was my best man, my god brother, he knew that I was dealing with trans women before I got married. The first time I married the same woman twice. Yes, I don't want to hear it, everybody. Everybody listening, okay, whatever. But he knew, but again, he didn't have the words, he didn't have the language to have a conversation with me to let me know that he knew that I was dating the girls and how to say, hey, brother, I know you this is not you and this is not what you want to do. Let's go.
And he is
So
not the only one in your family. You've had family members as well that also have been in relations with the girls, keeping it PG, that have had
well,
relations with the girls.
that's true. And
And they
again,
never talked about it.
yeah, for years we never talked about it. And then when we finally started talking about it, it was just like this huge weight was lifted. And it also showed that there's a lot of people in my life. I've had coworkers, one of my wife's, one of my ex-wife's friends,
Hmm.
old man Forrest, who was the handyman and the Blackbuster video guy across the street from my job. There were so many other men in my life who were actually dating trans women. But again, we at the time, no one ever stepped up and started talking about it. And I use the term stepped up instead of coming out because
Right.
it's a very different process for us. It's stepping up and stepping into this is who I am, this is what I like, and I'll be damned if anybody has something to say about it. Because I've had one family member tell me, anybody ever whoop your ass? Anybody ever confront you? No. And if they did, can they whoop your ass? No. What the hell are you worried about? It's
Well, what
and
is it? What are they worried about? What do you think
it's
that?
it's it's just the fear. It's an irrational fear. It's most of that fear is irrational. Again, I'll go back to this and I'll always say this as a disclaimer. I know that some men have lost family members, their parents or siblings or whatever have, thrown them aside or ostracized them because they're in relationships with trans women. I do understand that that happens. But one of my old friends told me, once you bite that tranny apple, and excuse me if this is one of the older trans women, back then it was something that you could say.
Right,
She said
right.
once you bite that tranny apple, you're never going back. Reference to Adam and Eve. Your eyes are open, and you see that everything is not like what they told you, and
Mm,
that's a great
that's a great
reference
point. Wow.
to help you understand and to help me understand. Because once my eyes were open, I tried to ignore it, so I was in this internal conflict within myself to stay away from trans women, to not go to certain places. When I was a district manager and I had units in the mall, I I would avoid going through Macy's because the girls were always at the Mac counter
Hmm.
working,
Beat down,
and
honey.
I didn't want to be looking.
Right.
So all of those things, you fight this internal battle, and when you don't have anyone to share that with, you fall deeper and deeper into that hole. And that's where a lot of the violence comes from. That's where a lot of the self doubt comes from. That's where all of the lies come from, because you're falling deeper and deeper into that hole because you think you're alone.
Mm,
Someone once told me, "You're not the Lone Ranger." He said the Lone Ranger was called the Lone Ranger, but he always had Tonto with him. He
that's
always had somebody riding with him. And after I stepped up, after I started living my truth, and that's the other thing, gentlemen, this is to all of you, listen to me. You have a lot of damn nerve dating or wanting to be with a open and out trans women, especially the trans women who are very public and who do advocacy work and expect them to hide in a closet to protect you. That is insulting.
it is.
These women live their lives openly 24/7. They go through more than we will ever go through.
And what I
No
would
matter
that, bro, is how are we supposed to respect you as a man when we go through so much just to learn and to be ourselves? And then you have this person who's trying to convince you that their life is more worthy than yours. So we got to keep your secret. Now, one of the things I will say, and this is controversial, I'm pretty sure by most people, is that I feel that, you know, one mistake that we got into was keeping all of these secrets and not demanding the respect that we deserve over the years, and just taking their money and just thinking that in the end it's going to work out. They're going to look out for us. They're going to come back and this. But we have seen, even in video evidence, where there would be a group of men who would see a transgender woman be assaulted or anything. The most horrible one was that one of the young lady that was at that gas station, and it was just so many people there who did nothing. And I think that is part of the mistake that we made. We didn't know how big of a mistake we were making, obviously. And if you're doing survival sex work and stuff like that, that's another conversation. But just in general, it's time for our community to stand up. It's time for us to demand the respect that we deserve, and not keep all of these secrets. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling people to go and out people. That's not what I'm saying. But if he's going to be a part of your life, you have to demand that respect. And if it doesn't work out, that person is not going to give it to you. Troy knows I'm not just saying this. He's been one of my best friends for years. I will leave that relationship, simply because for my own mental health, I don't want to be othered in the sense of my value on my life is not as important as how you value your life. And so therefore I'm supposed to be over here, or your trophy wife. You know, from my personal story, I've gone through all of these things. So what do you have to say about that?
again, it always circles back to fear. It always circles back to this is a problem that men have. At one point in my life, I was stuck on labels. I thought that labeling myself as a trans attracted or then a trans amorous man was very, very important. And I do think that it has a place. But when we look at sexuality and we look at gender, both are on a spectrum. We're taught differently. And it's hard to break us of embracing that concept that it's just black and white. So that's why I always say you must unlearn what you have learned, because we have religion,
Right.
which is the biggest demon. They demonize trans people. They demonize anything other than cis heteronormative relationships.
That's right.
But at the same time, your pastor is out there doing everyone.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right. And I
You
mean,
know,
there's
eh,
so many examples of it. That's the thing that gets me. Your husbands are out here doing these things. Your uncles, your grandpa, they're just not telling people. And that is why my memoir, I speak so prolifically about all of my experiences. People are shocked that I'm so open about it, but I'm just one trans woman. Every trans woman I know can say that they have heard from, whether they're major celebrities, whether they're politicians, whether they're actors or athletes or personal trainers or all the way to the street thug. Like, we have been with some of every type of guy, and depending on where you are in your transition, were the type of men that you were actually attracting at that time. And so, what I will say to everyone about having this wonderful journey of being a trans person, yes, it is hard. Society can be very harsh, but with all of those experiences, we're all more alike than we are different, as that cliche saying is. All of these men in various degrees are pretty much the same. Everyone wants happiness, they want love, they want to be accepted. All of those things, there's no different than a man who is attracted to a trans woman than anyone else. And I just want to put that out there and be real about it. Remember, when I was growing up, I didn't have any possibility models. I didn't know what being trans was. I just knew that something about me was different. So during that time, I might have identified as gay or androgynous or gender nonconforming, whatever it was. But I still was dealing with men the entire time. I've never been attracted to females or any feminine embodied person. So I'm attracted to masculinity. Me personally, most people who know me know that I prefer very muscular type of guys, athletes, and that kind of thing. But it has always been something that's been on my mind, because when you're young and you're young in your transition, you're thinking, oh my God, who is going to accept me? Who's going to want me? This is my truth, but is anyone going to be attracted to me? You walk out that door and you literally gag, because all the men in the neighborhood are trying to talk to you, and you're trying to say, well, wait a minute, you don't have a problem with me being trans. Oh, they do, if everyone knows about it. And that's it. As long as no one knows about it, you don't have no issues. But if people know about it, then there's an issue.
I do believe that a lot of trans women and the men that love them suffer from what I call cis heteronormative. Blah, 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 blah. Let's say that again. Cis heteronormative delusion syndrome, where they're so stuck in a mindset
Mm,
of how we've been taught and socially conditioned about who we are and how we love, that that they think that everything has to be put in that cis heteronormative box.
there you go. Yeah, I can
And
agree more.
I guess we can go deeper into that at another time because that's a really, really deep conversation. But being with a trans woman there's some similarities being with a cis woman, and there's some things that are different.
Right. That's right.
So if you are not comfortable with those differences, then why are you here?
Don't get me
And,
started on that.
and then the flip side, but there's a flip side to that. If you are a trans woman and you don't embrace your differences, then why am I here?
That's deep.
So this is a two-sided conversation. And
Absolutely.
so I'm quick to criticize men, and I will always criticize men. I will always say that I would not be the man I am today without those trans women, even when I was DL and looking over my shoulder and peeping around corners and
Right.
being afraid of my own shadow. If it wasn't for those women who I've known 30 and 40 years at this point, I wouldn't be the man I am today. They challenged me to do better and be better.
Well, one of the questions that you always pose to the gentlemen in your men's group, and you can talk about that as well, is you always say, well, how long should anyone wait? Or how long should trans women wait for you to get comfortable in your skin? How long should a man who is attracted to a trans woman, how long should he wait? What are your feelings about that?
Well, we both know a couple of people who, when we talked about the infancy of social media and how we all got connected, who was dating trans women back then, who was on a couple of sites doing things with trans women.
That's right.
And, 30 years later, or 25, 30 years later, he's still ducking and dodging and hiding. I mean, at what point, brother? I mean, getting married two, three, four times,
Hmm.
and each time you get married, you get caught with with trans women or what have you, and cheating, and and okay, then you get divorced, and then you get married again to another cis woman, and then it's wash, rinse, repeat. Well, that's insanity. Doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. That is the pure definition of insanity. And there are so many men who are stuck in that mindset. They are stuck in thinking that maybe this time I'll be normal. I'll be okay. I'll be normal. And that's a fantasy. It's not going to come true. You either have to be yourself, or you're going to continue to fight yourself. And then you're going to hurt all of the women, cis and trans, that come into your life, because you can't tell the truth to yourself, let alone to the women that you're involved in. And I know that I have hurt women in my life. I always talk about that. I never pretended that I was perfect. And that's the thing that bothers me the most about speaking up and stepping up. Go back and look at all of the other things that I've done. Read some of the articles that were done about me. Watch some of the interviews, watch some of the lives. If you are a part of any of the conversations that I've been in, I always talk about where I came from, because where I came from helped me be the man I am today. Yes, I've made mistakes. However, I come from it's a whole different world from the 80s, from the
Oh
mid
yeah.
80s.
And let's not forget all the people that behind the scenes you are there for. If you don't mind me sharing, like one in particular, a lot of people don't know that there are different celebrities and different people who contact Troy or myself. If they contact me first, I send them to Troy for help just in dealing with understanding themselves better, or they might be in a situation that's not so great. And one in particular that you can talk about wouldn't even tell you their phone number. We don't know exactly who that person was. We just know that they were an athlete. Tell us a little bit about that situation.
Well, years ago, I started a men's group with my buddy Jonathan Hayden, called the Trans Supporter Brotherhood. That was about 8 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And but even prior to that, I was working for a company where I had an NBA star at the time, and now he's retired, who was part owner of the company. So I got to go to all-star games and parties and stuff. So I would actually see a lot of athletes and actors and people of that nature, of that ilk, out with trans women who I knew. So it was really funny that I would go into these spaces, where, everybody thought that their girl was some, model or whatever, or just some hottie who just happened to be cis. And once they found out that I knew, their whole world was like shaken up, like, oh my God. And I literally had to talk them down, or talk them off, off that branch or off that cliff. It's just like, dude, it's cool.
One of the reasons why so many people don't know about our community and don't think that these men are attracted to trans women is because of the depths they will go to hide who they are and who they're dating. And that man was, of course, the extreme. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't even trust us with his phone number. So if he won't even tell us his real name, think about this, sisters. He's not telling us his real name. We don't have a real phone number for him. We found out it was a burner phone. So what is he doing with all the women in his life? And one of the things I said in my book, I was telling people, if a man won't even be honest that he likes, let's say, full figure women or short women or women with red hair, or he's cheating with someone on your same block, y'all are blaming us as trans women for the stuff that they're doing. And they're not even being honest with us. And here was a man who reached out for help and he still couldn't be honest.
And that's the shame of it all. And the fact that, these men, and it's been more than one, but this one in particular, it, if you can't look in the mirror and be real with yourself, then you can't be helped. And men who have that sort of mentality can be dangerous, because if you're not accepting yourself, and you keeping this secret is all encompassing, it's the most important thing in your life. As soon as the threat of you being exposed comes out, what you're going to do is that violence is going to go towards that trans woman and you're going to try to erase her. And literally almost every single murder that has happened, there was, and I can't think of her name, that was killed in Texas by the football player. And usually I have that on the top of my head, but I'm getting a little old right now. Uh, they were dating. His mother knew that they were dating, and they were in the car riding. He shot her in the head while the car was moving. He shot and killed her.
Hmm.
There was a pastor here who killed Kelly Stroh. He
Hmm.
was a client of the girls on the stroll, had been for multiple years. He was cheap and he was violent, and he
Hmm.
didn't give her her money. She demanded her money. He shot and he killed her and dumped her on the street.
And you
You know,
can't say that we were deceiving, which is the other ignorant thing that you hear people say, because as we're having this conversation, there's somebody that's out there that has to find a place to find a trans woman, y'all. You know what I'm saying? So there are men out there who, let's say there's a man who is looking for a woman like myself. He has to actively go and look, know where to go, the whole nine. So the stuff that we see in the media, this trans panic defense that we see to these murders, coming primarily through men of color, unfortunately, that we're finding doesn't make logical sense, because here I am, somebody may want to talk to me, they have to get to me, they have to find me. They don't know from walking up and down the street whether someone is cis or trans. You don't know what that is. So again, it really angers me when I see and hear some of these comments and stuff on social media about, well, that's what they get because of this, that, and such horrible victim blaming.
well, again, I also own a security company and I do a lot of LGBT spaces and LGBT events. And just recently, I was at a bar where a guy came in and it was called Dolls Night. So there were a lot of gender nonconforming and trans people there, and and gay people. He walked in, he saw that it wasn't his speed, and he flipped to being very, very angry and cussing and
Oh no.
just being just all demonstrative. And my thing is, if this isn't your thing, then keep it moving. But you're so violent, you were so over the top. Then clearly, and I made a point to say, well, clearly this is your issue because these people are living their truth and they're here having fun. You're coming in, it's not your thing, but you're out here yelling and cussing and ready to fight. And then he was like, well, if you didn't have all that security stuff, well, I'll kick your ass.
Right.
Let's fight. Of course, he walked away. But these men, a lot of these men, you're upset with yourself because you find these people attractive and they don't fit that cis heteronormative mode or concept that has been drilled into your head. So
Yeah.
those are the issues that most men have, and that they can't shake it. They don't know how to shake it. That's the one thing that a number of groups that I'm in. I'm also in another group. Chris, you're going to kill me.
And these groups are
Men
on.
Like Us. Right. They're on Facebook. It's called
Right.
Men Like Us. I got you, Chris. It's called Men Like Us, where Chris is a little bit more open. I'm in my group. I'm a little bit more advanced because some of these smaller issues, or I won't say smaller because the issues aren't smaller. Some of these beginning issues, I'm kind of tired of talking about. I'm tired of talking about trans attraction 101.
Right.
Cis heteronormative men knowingly seek out trans women for sex. Period. Period. They do. So all of this grandstanding and posturing and pretending and faking, I really don't have time for it because you can't BS me because I've already been there and done that. And that's the thing that gets to me. And that's why sometimes I have to step back and step away because, you're not going to pee on my head and tell me it's raining. I know what's going on. Let's be adults. Let's be open and honest. You are in a safe space. And if you can't talk to other men in that safe space about who you are and what you want and what you desire, then you're going to be a danger to the
Yeah.
community. Now, there are some guys who don't agree with me and some girls who don't agree with me because they feel that, I'm not respecting their journey. But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So how long do you take to finally wake up and open your eyes? When do you finally get it? Is it 6 months? Is it years? Is it 2 years? We know people that's 25, 30 years in the game and they're still living a lie. They're still hiding. They're still getting married. Yes, I married the same woman twice. Okay. Yeah, I did it. I did it. Yes, I can't. I, but again, that was in the early 90s and in the mid 90s. I got married, got divorced, still didn't have the language. I didn't have people around me, especially other men to talk to. And so I reverted back to how I was socially conditioned.
Right.
And then I
And you
just,
know, what I will say too is that when we're going to talk to the next guest is going to talk about things from a psychological point of view. And one of the things that she has taught me, my good sister and our good sister, Sydney Kimbrough, is that subconsciously that man came into that space for a reason. And one of the things that I had to learn from my own personal experiences, even when I meet guys out on the street or whatever, is that there's a reason that your energy and their energy match for whatever reason that was. And that person, even though he got all, crazy and all that kind of stuff, he knew what he was doing. And that's a hard reality to reconciling your mind, that here's someone, you came into this space, you saw what was there, you secretly really wanted to be there, but then that fear that you talk about really got to him, and men like that, and now it's violence. And that's what happens with us, you guys. This man will contact these ladies, whether it's on the street, whether it's online or what have you. He will then try to convince you that he's okay with everything, or what have you. But then something happens. And as a trans woman, especially of color, you have to be very careful. And it's my great friendships with you, Troy, and so some other guys who have been there for me, so that I always could see the signs when something wasn't right. And I would like for you to leave some signs for some ladies who are trying to get to know someone that could kind of help them to know if they're in a dangerous situation.
some of the signs are if he only sees you in the dark, after the sun goes down, he doesn't take you out. He always texts you and never calls you. He never has a conversation with you at certain times during the day, or he only calls you when he's at work. Do you know his name?
Mm, that's deep.
Because
Who?
I used to have a fake name. Uh, I have a girl that I had met, geez, decades ago, and I told her my name was Derek, and she still calls me Derek just to be funny. And we were at an event, and she goes, "Hey, Derek," and everybody turned to look, and his name's not Derek. Oh, he's always going to be Derek. And we laugh about it because it's funny, because that same girl years later, after I was telling her, my name, and I had finally started stepping up. I was actually in my longest term relationship, and that was with a trans woman. We were at the mall, and this group of guys were harassing her and her sister. And I noticed it. I walked over and I put my arms around them both and I said, "You ladies okay?" And, the guy who was making all the noise, they had actually had sex before. That's a man. And he was misgendering her and whatever, whatever. And I'm like, "Okay, but you're being disrespectful. And I think it's time for you to leave the mall." And he said, "Well, who the hell do you think you are?" I said, "I'm the mayor of the mall." And I waved to security. I said, "Escort these gentlemen out." So
Mm.
after it all happened, she said, "Well, now people know." I said, "My entire staff knows that my girlfriend's trans. My boss knows that my girlfriend's trans. I've stepped up in so many other spaces. So if a man can't include you in other aspects of his life, except for in your bedroom or at a hotel, then he pretty much doesn't really respect you. And you have to be careful, because him keeping this this facade of being a cis heteronormative man is the most important thing in his life, that can be very, very dangerous. So these
Mm,
are some of the things that you need to look
that's
at.
tea right
Because
there, y'all.
if he doesn't take you out to dinner or to the movies or, hold your hand in public, if he's never with you in the light of day,
Mm.
or if he says, yeah, I'm married, right? But, I'm going to get divorced and then we can be together. I'm going to get divorced next year when my kids graduate from high school, when they graduate from college, when they,
Right,
after they get their position on the board. I mean, it's always going to be an excuse
right,
because they're never really going to step up. And
right.
once you step up, things change.
We're going to break a lot of this stuff down in this series. I just want to introduce everyone to you in this segment, but we're going to talk about some very, very interesting conversations based on sexuality. For instance, do men have a preference to whether a trans woman is pre-op or non-op or post-op? We're going to be talking about things like that. We're going to talk about attraction. And we're going to get a little bit into that with my next guest, with Sydney. We're going to be talking about that as well, because I think that so many people are just confused as to like, how is this even possible? How are these men, and women? Let me make that clear too, men and women. How are men and women so attracted to trans women? This is something that I just never even heard of, and I might feel some kind of way about it. We're going to talk about all those things. And are there any subjects do you really want to focus on?
Well, and just talking about, the sexuality aspect and how we engage in sex. So I think a lot of men, like we said earlier, suffer from cis heteronormative delusion syndrome, where, okay, you're into trans women, you're into pre-op and non-op trans women.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that they are, you like women with a kickstand
Mm-hmm.
and, and, but you try to deny it. You try to pretend that you don't enjoy the total package.
Mm-hmm.
So th- these are a lot of the things that we don't have conversation. You and I have had these
All
conversations.
the
I've
time.
had these conversations with with Miko and with Diamond and and with other forward thinking women. But there's so many delusions out there that both the men and the women
And
have.
women, there you
So
go.
so again, this is just not a diss towards the men. And because on both sides of the fence we have so much to work on, but the one thing we have to do is come together and work on it. We tried to do that 8 years ago,
Right.
and a very small vocal minority of the community attacked us, basically attacking me, because
Absolutely.
there are some things that they don't want us to talk about, that they don't want us to share, because there are some things that a lot of the women aren't proud of, that they don't like, love, and respect themselves.
Themselves.
Therefore, they can't be adequate partners for men who do like, love, and respect themselves.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I did
so
want us to talk about that too before we go to Chicago is very important. We can't do a conversation about our relationship as friends and doing this sort of advocacy work to help to prevent and make people more aware about the murders that are happening against transgender women, specifically of color, by predominantly by men of color, but also we have to talk about Chicago. Chicago was we were asked to do a presentation at Creating Change, and there was a huge protest because those individuals that will remain nameless decided to lie and try to destroy your character. And unfortunately, the rest of the community kind of jumped on, not all, because a lot of big heavyweights, we all stuck up for you. But and I want to say that I'm so proud of all the men and women that stuck by you during that time, and I want to apologize on behalf of the community for what happened. You never gave up. Now you're on the board of LGBT Detroit. So I'm just so proud of you, because most people would have just ran into a cave and just never came back out, because it was very traumatic. It was very violent, and it shook the community up for years. So if there's anything that you want to say about that, this is your space to say something.
Well, as I said on a live not too long ago, that was debunked almost immediately. Basically, I was accused of being violent at the Hilton in Chicago at Creating Change 2016 in the bar. There were 100 or so people there. There were tons of witnesses. It never
Stop
happened.
there.
Right. It never happened, but I guess the shame of it all was it was not about me. It was about the fact that we were bringing something to the community, and my ex and other women thought that we shouldn't be making the money that we were making, because
That's
I was letting my girlfriend know, my ex, my girlfriend at the time, she knew everything about it. I told her what we were getting paid. I told her all of the things that they were doing for us, and some of her small-minded thinking friends thought that we were taking from them. And I'll say this to all the trans women listening: I will never speak for you, but you must give me the same respect. Don't speak for me. You're not a man. You're not a cis man who dates trans women. You don't know my story. You don't know my journey. You can speak as a passenger on that journey, just like I can speak as a passenger on your journey. And I always defer to you about your life and your subjects and the things that impact you. You have to give men the same grace. And that has been the problem ever since Chicago, ever since Creating Change 2016. Men are not giving the grace or the space to have these conversations, because it's easier. Even when Brother Malik stepped up, and yes, he was problematic, and yes, he said some things, and we were trying to give him direction. But when we aren't given the same space and the same grace to have the conversation, who's going to step up in that situation? I I've had the pleasure of, one of my first community involvements was with the Tom Phillips Post in Detroit, where the Post in Detroit is iconic for ballroom. Literally, through the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s, all the major balls in Detroit happened at the Post. You can go to YouTube, you can look up the Post, you can watch the videos, and you will see me yelling at people or walking across the floor, because I've been doing security for the community for that long. And then let me give a shout out to my company, Hannibal Protection Services. We do a lot of work in the community. We secure and keep safe the LGBT community. That is one of our specialties, because we have an understanding with the community. We have skin in the game with the community. So I've been doing that for a very long time. Sitting on the board of LGBT Detroit, I have the honor of holding that position. LGBT Detroit is the largest Black LGBT run nonprofit in North America. LGBT Detroit is 30 years old. Our Black Pride event, Hotter Than July, is the longest running, continuously running Black Pride event in the nation. You know, but again, the problem that we have, as you and I have a great relationship. I have great relationships with Diamond and other women, but here in Detroit, you can't complain about what's going on and not want to sit at the table and have a conversation. And these are the problems that this community continues to have. You talk about a situation, but you don't want to be a part of the solution. You want to criticize people who have skin in the game, who are at the table, and make all of these claims. Where are you? I'm there. I am always there. I'm in all these spaces. I'm in all of these spaces. So you
And
can't
you're
say
asked to
that,
be. Let me make that very
right.
clear too. It's not like you just bombard and just show up. You're asked to be, you have a track record, and you've been doing this work for so long now. You're writing a book. I can't wait for your book to be released. What is the title of your book so people can look that up when
It,
it
it's
releases?
it's called Running from My Shadow. It is finally with the editor. My grandson in the community, Magic Damon Percy, is editing it right now. He has been on my head and basically strong armed me and just took it and said, okay, let's get this done. So it is close. I do have to finish writing the last chapter on Chicago, on
Right.
creating change, because it's a difficult story to write without becoming angry. But telling this story is a long time coming. I've been working on it for quite a while.
Yeah.
And as a man, sometimes I say I don't have to do this. I can enjoy the fruits of this community without putting my skin in the game. But after stepping away from a while, after creating change, I thought somebody else would step up. They never did.
Mm-mm, no.
And
And you were the
my
first one. So it's so
yes,
interesting how you were the first one to step up. There's videos, if people don't believe us, you can find videos on YouTube that go back 10, 11 years. And you were just as vocal and speaking about the same things and being very direct and open and honest, just sitting in your living room telling your truth years before this was a popular subject, before many of us, our careers started going more mainstream, before even Mr. Malik Yoba did his thing. You were out here, and so that is why I'm paying homage to you and the work that you do and continue to support you as well. And I want to see you join with these other guys as you're doing in your group, which we were saying before. You guys can find on Facebook. They're
Facebook,
private Facebook groups, correct? Like how
right.
does someone need to get in contact with you in order to get an invitation? How does that work?
Well, that would be probably best. And you can reach me on Facebook, Troy Kennedy. That is who I am. That is my name. You can also reach me on Instagram
That's a
under Miss.
pain. I heard that.
Well,
Because
uh,
there's
it,
so many people out here that do not, y'all have no clue, but that's an inside joke. There's so many people out here that are even supposed advocates that are using like multiple profiles on Facebook and fake
and
names
fake
and
names. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Troy Kennedy.
shock.
Um, uh, but you can find me on Instagram at Mr. Mister_Kennedy with three Y's, Mr. Kennedy. And yeah, those are the places where you can find me. I'm easy to find. You can come to our groups. There's also Chris's group called Men Like Us. These groups are there. We have real open and honest conversations.
How can we
And
support you more though? What would you like to see as far as support?
well, what I would like to see as far as support from, especially, I want to see more guys engage. I'm not a young man anymore. I might look good, but I'm not a young man anymore. And I'm really, I was really hoping that some of these younger men who came up in this life where the exposure was different, the information was different, that they would, and so it made it easier for them to step up. That now you use your voice, you become visible and vocal, because trans women are out there by themselves. And we men need to be, if we are going to partner with them, then we need to partner with them, not just in the bedroom. We need to partner with them in the boardroom, at work, and wherever they are, we need to be as not just as partners, but as allies. We have to put skin in the game,
Yeah.
because very rarely do you hear about men getting hurt or assaulted. Yes, there's a couple of occasions where people might be able to bring up, but let's bring up those two or three or four or however many people can find. But let's bring up, the hundreds of deaths that have happened, or the hundreds of assaults, or the women who have lost their jobs, kicked out of their homes. There's so many things that trans women go through that we don't, and we can use our cis privilege as men in ways that these trans women cannot use. And so what I want from men is to step up and I gotta say it like this, stop being a little bitch about it. Stand up. Stand up and stop being a coward. Because at some point, I'm gonna write you off. And I'm gonna keep it moving and try to find like-minded men to walk with me. Because I'm not going to support you and your backward ideas. I'm not going to allow you to you're dating trans women, but in your mind, they ain't nothing but men and you gay. Because I've walked away from people who said that. I'm like, really? That's how you feel? All right, bro. Deuces. I'm
Right.
out because you are disrespecting all of these women who love you and care for you and that you're with, but you don't even respect who they are. And that's and this there's so many things, and this conversation could go on and on and on and on and on. But I'll
Right.
leave you with this. You can reach me on Facebook. It's real easy. Troy Kennedy. Send me a message. My page is public. It's open. You can go on my page and you can see all my public. But all my posts are public. I have nothing. I don't have nothing to hide, but I want the world to see. Um,
Thank you so
it's
much.
it's I, the passion that I have, I kind of let them, throw some water on that fire. And now I have to give my executive director at LGBT Detroit and you and Damon, because I know you're going to watch it, Damon. I have to give all of you three, especially, I got to give y'all a lot of credit for, poking the bear and saying, you got to get back out there because if not you, then who? And
Right.
so Zaire Kwabena,
Mm-hmm.
Damon Persimmon, and Tona Brown, the three of you, y'all have done so much for me, and I am going to be there for you.
Right.
And
Wait,
this movement.
you've always been consistent, and I'm not the only woman who's been a platonic friend of yours who has told you that, okay? You've always been consistent. You've always been a warrior for a cause that most men just will not take up. And then some that did, which we mentioned a little earlier, did it in a way that kind of messed things up by mistake. And but I was there even for those individuals, and I'll always be there for anyone who's a truth teller, anyone who wants to learn, like honestly wants to learn, because I think sometimes we think that, you know, there are groups of people who just don't want to know anything about this community, or are just gonna not want to learn something new. That's not always the case. The information that we're giving is different than what they're hearing out on the street or what's on YouTube or what have you. So I want to say to you as well that I have a dream that you will find that group of men who are public figures, who are just regular Joe Schmoes, who are going to be willing to be out with their wives. Because again, we all assume that you're going in a cul-de-sac and you don't know what's going on with people in their sex lives. It's actually hysterical to you and I, but most people would never think about that. There's someone in their neighborhood. I was one of them, engaged, living in my fiance's home as his little trophy wife, that he didn't want anyone to know that I was trans, and I did not want to live that way. So there's a lot of people that do, and I'm not judging them. It just wasn't right for me. Okay. And so I just want to salute you. I think you're gonna find that group, and these guys are going to be amazing. They're going to be so supportive. You already have a small group already, but they're going to get more and more public as time progresses.
And let me leave you with this. It's pinned on my Facebook page that for the guys in Detroit. If you are, dating trans women, you're open about it or not open about it, and you want to have a safe space to come and have conversations. I have, with LGBT Detroit, I have 3 buildings that we can have conversations. It can just be us.
Mm-hmm.
We can have conversations and we can help each other. That offer has been there for a while. of course, Joel
Right.
answered, but that's my little brother.
Right.
But it's a shame
Shout
that
out
I
Joelle.
haven't got
Doing.
that I haven't gotten more men here in Detroit. Now I've gotten guys from out of state, and I might have to expand it to being maybe a regional thing or just doing one big event to get more guys involved because again, there are way more guys out there who are into trans women, but the men who will even step up to even admit it to other men
Mm.
is minuscule. It's very, very small. So, again, to all the brothers out there and they all know who they are, and maybe I'll
Mm-hmm.
give them a shout out on our next conversation. But
Absolutely.
to those who are married, to those who are in long term relationships, like Doug and Tierre, those are
Jonathan.
my brothers. Jonathan, I'm blessed that I'm able to pick up the phone and have a conversation. Marcus,
Mm-hmm.
I have conversations with all of these men at the drop of a hat. If I call them, Chris Patterson, who has the Men Like Us,
Doug.
yeah, oh yeah, of course, Doug. I talk to him every day too. So, but these are men who that I can talk to about anything from comic books to wrestling to movies to whatever we're into and about our love life and share it and not just hold it in. Because when you hold in all of that negativity and when you hold in all that bullshit, it's gonna fester, it's gonna turn into darkness and it's gonna come out and you're gonna hurt somebody. You're gonna hurt yourself, you're gonna hurt those around you.
Well,
That's all I gotta say.
I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have more conversations. We're going to do a deeper dive into some of the subjects that we kind of glossed over. I just wanted people in this first interview to know who my good friend is and the type of work that he's doing and the lives that you're changing, whether it's regional or international, because I know from being behind the scenes the type of people that do contact you that you've met out in public and had these conversations with. And conversations are so important. And you're giving them solutions, you're giving them calls of action. And we're going to be talking more and more about that in this series. So if there's anything you guys who are listening want to know, certain specific questions that you may have, please let us know. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy, for coming on Conversations with Tona Brown. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. You're just such a brave, courageous, and phenomenal guy. And I'm so glad to be able to share you with the entire world now with this podcast.
Well, I'm only as brave as those who have inspired me.
Thank you all so much for listening, and there's so much more to come. If you really enjoy these sort of conversations, be sure to give us a rating and comment and share. You can also find me on Twitter under @tenacity. You can find me on, or Tona City is how it's spelled. Also on Instagram, same thing @tenacity. You also can find me on Threads and also Facebook. So I cannot wait to get the feedback and to hear from you. Thank you so much. And this is it for this episode of Conversations with Tona Brown.